Hello, my name is Paige Johnson and I am a Creative Studio certified instructor. I'm very excited to be able to talk to you today about one of the new features in Creative Studio 6. That is concatenating point to point. In a previous video, I've already shown you and given you a project to make these calligraphy letters and turn them into point-to-point patterns. Now I'm going to take those patterns and make some very fun and useful banners using them. We're going to be using the concatenating point-to-point feature to make banners. To begin with, let's start talking about concatenating in general. Now, we've had this before with repeat patterns. Now, I have a number of point-to-point patterns here, and you'll notice that if you look at the height and width, that one's 2 inches, 4, 3, and 1. They're all totally different sizes. If I want to use these patterns in concatenation, I need to select them. And by selecting them, they will turn blue. To select more than one pattern, once you've hit your first one, it is blue, hold down your Control key. Then you can pick the patterns you want in the order you want them. Then I'll go to the repeat pattern section. You'll notice here that it says my pattern width and height is 3 inches. That's because that is the width and the height of the first pattern I selected. Those attributes are going to be applied to all of the patterns in this sequence. So if I go in here and say I want 5 repeats and 5 rows, I'll put that on the screen, and you'll notice that the patterns go in the order I selected them. This entire screen here is 15 by 15 inches high. So let's take that out of the way. I'm just going to move it over, and I'm going to select my patterns in a different order. Let's start with the 2-inch pattern. I'm going to hold down my Control key and then select the other patterns, repeat patterns. Now my total width and height of the pattern itself is 2 inches. I'm going to go into 5 repeats, 5 rows, and you'll see that the attributes, the dimensions of the first pattern were applied to all of the rest. So now let's take a look at this process in point to point. I'm going to select my first pattern, and that is 4 inches. The difference here is the attribute of the first pattern is not going to be applied to the subsequent patterns that I choose. The order is going to be there by what pattern I choose, but the size is going to depend on the distance that I click. Here I have my grid snap on, and if I go 4, here's 2, here's 6, you'll notice that the distance with my freeze aspect on is going to determine the size of my patterns. If I click them all at the same distance, they're all going to be the same. But if I vary the distance between my clicks, my patterns are going to vary in size. So that's the basis of this. The order in which you select your patterns will determine how they're placed on the screen. And if you want a pattern to wind up in your sequence more than once, you need to have it on your pattern preview window twice and select it twice. I'm ready to make my banner. I have loaded some felt. I actually have 2 layers of felt with a layer of white cotton batting in between. So I'm going to have a little bit of body in my banner. And I have clicked out a very rough outline of my available sewing space with my create boundary. That will tell me where to place my patterns. The banner is made up of individual placards, one placard for each letter. And this banner pattern here is 10 inches high, and I'm thinking maybe that's a little larger than I'd like. I'd like to make something that I could string across my front window in my shop here. So I'm going to change my height to 4 inches. Because my freeze aspect is on, once I hit enter, my pattern width will change accordingly. So now I'm going to go into repeat patterns, and I need one of these banner patterns for each letter in my string. And I want to say I heart quilts, because don't we all? We all love quilts. So I'm going to need one for the I, then one for my heart symbol, and then quilts. And that makes for 8 different banner patterns. So I'm going to go into repeat patterns, and I'm going to change my number of repeats to 8. And I'll say OK. I'm going to grab all of these patterns and move them in their entirety into my available sewing space. So that's located where I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and hit the quilt icon and let this stitch out. That has stitched out, and I have cut my bobbin thread, and I can say OK. Now I want to put in my letters. I have made some new point-to-point letters to fit into my banner from some letters that were on my machine when I got it. And they actually came from Precision Stitch. That's how long ago that was, but they still work great. I've made some changes, so let's look at those letters. I have in my arsenal point-to-point letters for all of the alphabet, and we want to say I heart quilts. So let's go find the I. I'm going to select that. I have a heart. I'm going to select that. Quilts. Q-U-I. Now I already have an I selected, but in concatenation I'm going to need a pattern for every time I want that particular pattern in my sequence. So if I want 2 I's in this sequence, I'm going to need 2 I patterns. So I'm going to select that I once again. I'm going to hold down my Control key while I select it. I, L, T, and S. Select. Now I have my patterns here. When we concatenate in repeat patterns, we need to select the patterns in the order in which we want them to appear on the screen. The same is true in point to point. Let's select our patterns. I want the I. That pattern is blue. It is selected. If I hold down my Control key, I can click on and select the next pattern in my sequence. I heart quilts. Q-U. I need another I. I-L-T-S. Now with all of those patterns blue, that means they're all selected, I'm going to go into my point to point. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to click on the inside corners of each banner. So I'm going to click, and you can see that that letter has dropped in. Now the next place I want to click is on the corner of the next banner, but I don't want a letter to come in between. If I hit my middle button, which is the stop button, that's the same as interrupting. I can move my laser to the next spot and click again, clicking on that 2 corners. Stop, which really means interrupt. Click and click. Stop, corner, corner, stop, corner, corner, stop, corner, corner, stop, corner, corner, stop, corner, corner. Then I can hit Shift plus exit from my keypad to exit. Now these were point-to-point letters. There is a tiny, tiny speck of a pattern in this corner that makes it a point-to-point, but it is so small that Statler will not sew it. When I sew this pattern, it's going to sew just the letters themselves. It will stop in between each letter. I have my stop at jump stitches highlighted under my controller definitions. So let's stitch this out. Oh, that turned out so cute. I'm going to say okay. Now I want to put a ribbon on here that I can hang this on. I'm going to be trimming around the banner plackets themselves. You could either use a regular scissors, or I have a pinking rotary cutter that I think I'm going to use to cut out the placards after I have everything done. But I'm going to sew on a ribbon that is going to hang my banner, and I'm going to do that with a point-to-point pattern that is, let's see, where is it? It's my little zigzag pattern here, and this pattern is less than 1/4 of an inch high, and I want to use 1/4 of an inch ribbon. I'm going to measure from one edge of my banner to the other. I can either do that on screen by going Alt plus M and clicking on one end, then the other. Oh, my grid snaps on. Doesn't matter. It says it's 27 inches. Or I can use my measure icon and my machine head and click on one end, then the other, and I'm getting approximately the same thing here, 27.23. I'm going to cancel that. That's the same as putting my tape measure in my pocket. I'm going to go down here to my little zigzag pattern. I'm going to go into repeat pattern, and if I right-click within the total width box, my measurement that I just took will come up. I'm going to click on that number to transfer that over. I'm going to say OK. Oops, I'm going to move my machine head down to the center here. I'm going to say OK. And my pattern is going to come up on the screen. Because I had my center reference on, it placed it in the middle of wherever my crosshair was. So I'm just going to move that up over my little banner here. I'm going to cut a width of ribbon that is, probably at least 10 inches, maybe 15 inches longer than my banner, because I want something on the end. I'm going to lay my ribbon out over the top of my banner, and then when I hit quilt, Statler's going to run over and take its first stitch. Now I'm going to, because I really want to make sure my end is very secure, more than just my tie-offs, I'm going to do a couple of stitches, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to be moving the quilt down slightly as I click, moving the quilt with my hand, which will move the needle position. Now I can say quilt, and I am just going to hold down that ribbon while Statler stitches it. As long as I keep the ribbon underneath the hopping foot, nothing gets caught. Sometimes I like to hold on to it. I don't just let it sit there. But this will give me a nice little top to my banner. Okay, that turned out great. I have another idea. I'm going to make a banner for my front door of my shop. One side's going to say open, and one side's going to say closed. And I can do that. The word closed has 6 letters. I'm going to take my banner pattern and I'm going to go into repeat patterns, and I'm going to give myself 6 repeats, 1 segment for each letter. And I do want this sign to be 2-sided. So I'm going to say I want 2 rows. I'm going to say OK, and Statler's going to place those patterns on my screen. I'm going to move them down here. I'd like these to go together, so let's flip this one, and you can see now that they are lined up perfectly. So when these stitch, I'll be able to then go back and put closed on one side and then open on the other. Before we stitch that out, let's try another one of Creative Studio's new features. The way my patterns are going to stitch is they're going to stitch the first row going all the way over, then they're going to come back and they're going to stitch the second row. But I would like them to stitch all the way over and then stitch back without coming back to the first part. So I'm going to go to Order Join. I'm going to click on that, and everything has been put together. Let's see. Yes, it did. It made my sewing order going over and coming back. Oh, Statler's so smart and so much fun. Let's go ahead and stitch this out. The banner has stitched out. Now I need to go and find my letters. So let's start with the word closed. I'm going to select my first pattern. I'm going to hold down my Control key while I select the next letters. So C, L, O, S, E, D. Now for open, O, P, E, N. With all of my letters selected, they're all blue, and in the order I want them, I'm going to go into point to point. Now my first row here is actually upside down. So in order to have my letters fall up, I'm going to have to click in the opposite direction. So I'm going to start on this side. I'm going to click, click, stop, click, click, stop, all the way across this. Click, click, stop, click, click, stop. Now I'm going to be coming back in the opposite direction, but I want to skip my first flag. So I'm going to go click, click, stop, click, click, stop, click, click, stop, and click, click, stop. There, I'm ready to stitch, but before I do, I'm going to be doing this as an applique instead of coloring in my letters. So I have put some fusible on one side of a blue piece of fabric. I'm going to turn that over and place it right over my area. And if I want, I can put a couple of little pins on the side just to hold it. Now I'm not fusing this down. The fusible is fused to the fabric itself. Now I can go ahead and hit quilt. This was a fun project. I found I could start making banners for just about anything. The small one on the top is going to go on a Christmas tree or across a doorway. I'm even getting ready for Valentine's Day. On this particular banner, I stitched out the letters, and then I went back and I colored them in with glitter glue. That worked really well. The only downside was I had to wait for the glue to dry. On the other set, I did an applique process. I placed all my patterns on the screen. I stitched out the banner plackets. Then I put my point-to-point letters on. Before I stitched the point-to-point letters, I placed fabric over the area. Then afterwards, all I needed to do was to cut out right around all of the little letters. Because there's fusible on there, they're not going to fray. And I can then fuse them down after they're cut out. I cut out my pieces, then I took it to my domestic machine and folded it in half. I stitched right along this edge only up until a certain point here, which gave me a casing to thread that ribbon through. I'm loving it already, and you can really see this from the street. I hope you can think of some words that you'd like to express and make a banner yourself.